Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, sweetie.
Welcome to our podcast. And we are two trauma survivors walking each other home. And each week we go for a walk for about an hour and discuss different topics around healing and how we heal and what parts need healed and stuff like that. If you get triggered at any time during this meeting, you can message either one of us on Facebook. We're both there. Or you can go to Google and say trauma warn line, and it will give phone numbers for places that can offer you support. Knowledgeable, non judgmental support. And drink water, their best thing.
Thank you, Denise Rokicki. And I'm Holly Elissa Bruno. And this podcast has been going on 5 years next month. And it's about just what Denise said. It's about helping those of us that are trauma survivors and those of us that love, live with, work with, take care of, teach trauma survivors, because you can be traumatized from birth. In fact, before birth. Or something can happen to you at any age, 93, and then you're traumatized. So this program is to invite you and Denise and me to just tell the truth in a safe place without blaming anybody, without shaming anybody, without inflaming anybody. We just tell our truths, and we do it in a way where we're always keeping our eyes on the prize of how can I live my life fully? Given my whole system, and especially my brain, but every nerve cell in my body was conditioned to be based in fear, to be based in fear. And I will show you this. This podcast began when this book came out. I hope you can see it.
It's in and out.
It's
Put
in
it
and
right in
out,
front of your face. Put it right in
right
front of your face. There it
there.
is.
That's it.
Yep.
It's called Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You. And then the other title is Translating Trauma's Harsh Legacy into Healing. You have to go to Exchange Press in Lincoln, Nebraska to get this, or you can get it, the online version at Amazon. But this book is a truth-telling story of my life as a trauma survivor. And embedded in it are all kinds of principles and research and theory and ways and stories and practices about how to be ourselves, given I could be fully defined by my trauma. So we got a half an hour. And you know what? If you want to join us, you can. You can join us in any way. You can just listen. You can click in and be online with us. You can be part of the chat and you can enter things into the chat. We've had that going for years. A lot of good feedback there. You can, and we've had people come on face to face with us. So there are other people up here, but here's the important thing. And it's important for anyone who's a trauma survivor. We are always at choice. That means you get to choose how engaged and how involved you want to be. And just as Denise said, if at any point something starts not feeling safe or comfortable to you, please take care of yourself. You'll see that Denise and I do that during the meeting too. We just sometimes, I usually do it by saying, here's how I'm feeling right now. It's kind of scary. And we'll both be drinking the water. And what I want to say is our desire, heart's desire, is to co-create with you a safe space where you can be yourself. You don't have to feel like you're putting on a mask or covering up, because the way we heal is to live in the truth rather than living in denial. Denise, is denial something that you're familiar with?
Yes, very familiar with. And, I lived a lot of my life. Well, I never really denied that I was traumatized or molested, but I have denied feelings that, I was chastised to not have. So I denied them if I had them.
And I have a sister who's gone now. She died in the way that sadly many of us trauma survivors died, because if you've read the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, you know that those of us who were traumatized have a significantly higher chance of experiencing all kinds of adult difficulties. One of those difficulties is heart disease, which I've had, and I've had surgery for that. Another difficulty is cancer. I have many relatives that have died of cancer. Another difficulty is addiction. Denise, do you have people in your family that have drug, alcohol addiction, or other types of addictions?
Yes, definitely. Also, another disease is endometriosis. A lot of my friends that I, ended up sharing about trauma had endometriosis from sexual abuse.
And I'll say this, and I just want to let you know in advance, it is very direct and it is very difficult, but I'm one of three women, every three women in the United States who's been sexually molested. I was incested from a very early age on. And my theory, which I have not seen proven at all, is that a number of us who were sexually abused end up not having our own children. We end up caring for the children of other people. And what do you think about that, Denise? We haven't talked about that.
Yeah, I think that's also true. Choose not to bring children into this world where abuse is possible, and also, don't trust our mothering potential. Other,
Yeah, but I hear you, girl. And that was part of my thing. But I did, when I hit 30, 31, I said, you know what? I'd like to have children. I'd like to give them a different chance than I had. And I thought about being alone as a single mother, but that was like 1977,
yeah, that.
76. And boy, that would have been a tougher journey than it just would have been too impossible. So I decided that I would get married. And here's my thought. I tried to have children, wanted to have children. The doctors never found anything amiss with me, nothing. And I had doctors studying me in England when I lived there and also in the United States. But my theory is that I raised my mother. And in many ways, I cared for my father. And as a group, I was my family's caregiver in terms of being the person that kept my family as much as possible sane, which meant not exploding in public, because that would have been the worst shaming thing at all if people discovered what was going on behind closed doors. So I feel like I parented institutions and literal people. And when my sister got older, the one that died of autoimmune disease, and I was going to say that one of the things that happens to us besides cancer, addiction, endometriosis, which Denise pointed out, heart disease, is autoimmune disease. And my sister died of autoimmune disease. And her way back to denial, what is denial? It's like, that didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about. My
Right.
father literally said to me, "You didn't see that, daughter. You didn't see that." And his command was, forget it, which was a sickening demand. And my sister who died had something called, oh dear, it's chronic, and it is called dissociative amnesia, which is what happens when we just over and over and over again deny what happened to us. She thought she was from the perfect family, and she couldn't remember a thing. Denise, she couldn't remember a thing from her childhood, even though it was the perfect childhood. Does that make sense to you in any way?
Yeah, it does. I have one sister that doesn't know anything about it. Nothing, like, she doesn't know anything about it. Because her husband once asked me when I was visiting uh why I was gone away so long from, my family. And
Because
so I told
you lived in the Southwest for what, 20 years or something?
35, I lived.
Wow.
I
Mhm.
came back and forth across. I lived in Richmond, Virginia also, then back to California, and yeah. all the
Oh, the
way across.
geographical cure. Did you get the
Yes.
geographical cure?
I got to work with a lot of cultures though, so that was beautiful. That's something that was enhancing. And I did want to say too, that Head Start program, one of the reasons I love the Head Start program is the first thing that I learned, continuous improvement. And I learned that at my Head Start job in Phoenix, Arizona, because you know how they
And
do.
why did that speak to you, especially as a
It
survivor?
spoke to me so hard because we can get better, we can heal, we can help others heal, we can report grievances in a helpful way as opposed to a hurtful way. It was just continuous improvement. I really bought into that idea and the way that they presented it. It was like they used the example of like postal things going by on a belt and sorting them and how we could improve it or something. It was very interesting, but I bought right into it. And that's part about walking each other home. We are, helping, we're trying to improve and we're trying to improve it for others.
And I hear you, Denise, and one of the toughest things for me to improve upon is believing in progress, not perfection. That's a 12-step saying. But I was raised to believe that I was worth nada, nothing, unless I could do things perfectly. And even when I did things perfectly, which was almost impossible for a kid, but I would scrub the bathroom, scrub it 3 times until it sparkled so much that my mother couldn't come in with her gloves on and find anything not sparkling. So that got me some points for the moment, got me safe. I could go outside and play, thank God. But the sad thing is, I learned that I myself, my as is self, was worth nothing. Nobody wanted that kid. Nobody wanted me as I was. So I shut down, probably in many ways from birth, from being my true self. I kept that hidden inside so nobody would see it. Because if
Because
it
your
came
father
out,
wanted a son.
oh,
So
thank you, Denise.
you were immediately a disappointment.
My father had all the kids he could have, and then it was for some physical reasons, and then I was his last one. And because he was a narcissist, and narcissists are all powerful; they're gods. So my father believed if he wanted a son, he was going to have a son. And back in the day, they didn't do
Right.
testing. I was born in 1945. They did not do testing, so they didn't know. And I came out not a son. And he was so enraged, as if I had caused it, I had betrayed him, that he would yell at me from all my early years. He'd yell at my mother. He wouldn't even approach me, yell at my mother, get her out of my sight. And they'd put me in a pantry that wasn't heated, that didn't have food. I wasn't allowed to cry, I wasn't allowed to speak. So the message was loud and clear. And it comes true. I would ask you guys, if you're a trauma survivor or you know someone who is, does that person have a tendency to believe she's got to get it all right? She got to be all things to all people. Denise, when you were in the classroom and you were teacher Denise, what was the story there? You were really good.
Yeah, I would a definite people pleaser, and I tried to perfect each area of teaching. You know, every year I focused on a different aspect and tried to improve and make
And you
myself
did.
better. And I did. Yep.
You did. Give us an example of how, for example, with children that are, they're just crying out for help, but often they get stereotyped as difficult behavior children. What's an example of how you improved over and over again so that the difficult children, the children that were really crying out for help, got sent to you?
Yeah, they did. Well, when I was in school studying special education, really the going way was behavior modification for special ed kids,
Yep.
which I did not resonate with. It was either you're
Uh,
getting punished or you're getting a reward. And I didn't resonate with that. And that's kind of why I lean towards early childhood because play based. We're not trying to form them into any student or whatever. We're just playing with them, Head Start. And so that's why I kind of went towards that. What was the question?
Well, and by the way, as I think of the other question, how are children learning through play?
Oh my gosh, they
They
learn
learn through
everything.
anything else.
They
Yeah.
learn the important stuff, which was kindergarten back when we were younger, is when you learned how to get along, how to be with a group, how to follow a couple directions. There are ABCs and one, two, threes. You didn't have to know them all, but there are some, and we would, sing about them or count or whatever. But it's different nowadays. They want these kids 2 grade levels ahead of what it used to be.
The belief here is just right on point with trauma survivors because children need the freedom to discover things on our own, but we cannot learn unless we're safe.
Right.
And children who are traumatized do not feel safe. So Janice, even a child walking into your classroom where children were free and they were respected, how did that child accept that if every time she went home she got smacked as I was, or she got shamed or she got sent to the pantry? How did a child get it that playing was okay when she was supposed to be responsible for raising all of her 2 and 3 and
Siblings,
1-year-old
right,
siblings?
right. Yeah, I also announced to them or let them announce that they're safe. This is a safe place here. You know, I made sure they understood that verbally. They heard those words. They said those words, I am safe. It was a very important part for me.
And I
And
love the ritual
yeah,
you took those children through every day, not took them through, but became until it became their ritual where they walked
right.
in and left behind. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's what they would do. They'd come in and leave that behind. I did get a lot of extra behavior children, and they really needed that to know that they were safe. And I created that, and I facilitated that. And one of my favorite stories, a little girl came and sat down next to me at the lunch table and said, "What'd she say? Oh, I got kicked out of my last preschool." I go, "Oh, you did? How'd that happen?" And she said, "Yeah, I kicked my teacher." And I go, "Well, you got the right teacher now." And I reminded her that probably every week. Remember that first day when you came into school and you told me that, you like to kick teachers?
And how did she respond when you reminded her?
She loved it. She knew that I remembered, that she is important, that
Mhm.
she changed. She never tried to kick me. She
Talk
would
about continuous improvement.
jump to
Yes.
me, but she
Yeah.
would not kick, she never acted violent toward me because I
There's,
always gave
yeah.
choices. Do you want to read
And
this
giving,
book or this book? They might not have
Mhm.
been huge choices, but which one do you want? Which that's
And
what
choices leads to safety because if you're not telling me what to do and I can choose something, then I might feel safer with that. I might feel safer because you've already read Very Hungry Caterpillar to me 20 times, and I kind of know those words. But if you read me a new book and expect me to comprehend it when my mind is shutting down, I'm going to be scared about that. So giving
right,
kids choice is beautiful. The other thing you did, and I remembered the question, but the other thing you did that's powerful is something that adults, especially trauma survivors, but every adult on earth needs somebody who will listen without judging, totally accepting, as Walt Whitman said, be curious, not judgmental.
right,
Children, when they feel judged, are going to shut down, shut right down. They go home to feeling they're being judged. Oh, here's the stupid one coming in the door, or here's the one that always has got trouble. Here comes
trouble,
trouble.
right. There comes
Wasn't
trouble.
funny when I came in the door. It was like, no, you can't count on her for anything, or she probably got in trouble today. The stereotypic stuff. So, what I wanted to ask you was this, sweetie. Some of the traits we developed as trauma survivors, like trying to be good at everything, like trying to be perfect, they sometimes were positive traits. They helped us in some ways.
Right,
Did
right.
that come up? And so they're hard to let go of. So maybe we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Do you have an example of when that happened for you?
I do. I quit my full-time job a year ago, actually. I stopped getting
Wow.
paid there. And I have had to learn that to not judge myself for not being productive constantly. And honestly, it's taken the whole year to relax my demands. Like I don't have to have my clothes set out every night. Some nights I can, I mean, if there's something big, yes, I will, something that I have is important. But anyway, the point is, I do not have to be as efficient, and I've gotten used to that. I'm developing that kind of skill. I don't have to measure up to my coworkers, so I've been able to let go of that pressure. So it's interesting. I like it. I like being retired.
It's a very big deal. And the way I described what your situation when you said goodbye to working for an organization, when I did that, I said I felt like I had taken off a girdle. Now, many people listening don't have a clue what a girdle is, because fortunately, oh, maybe they know about Spanx or something. But when I was growing up, the only way to wear those obnoxious stockings that weren't pantyhose, I hated those too. Anything that was restrictive, I hated. But we had to wear girdles because the girdles had those snappy things that you could attach stockings to. And it was totally unacceptable for a girl not to cover her legs with stockings.
Right.
And so, oh my God. So I remember one time putting a girdle on to go out and play golf. Now, I went out and played golf because my parents joined a country club. Why? Because that meant that all summer long, my mother didn't have to deal with us. She could just get us a ride, or she drove us to the country club, left us there for a day, often didn't leave me with money. So I'd be starving. I'd see the other kids buying themselves hamburgers. I didn't have the money to do that. And I was scared to death to ask her for that because I was supposed to earn the money babysitting. But the deal was, I'm forgetting what I was raising this for. What was I talking about, Denise, that got me into this thing?
We
Oh,
were
it was
traits.
it was about the girdles. Here we
Oh,
go. What I felt like you described
restrictions.
the
Right.
restrictions, I felt, okay, I'm taking that girdle off. I'm shaking free. I don't have to wear any of that stuff anymore. But I felt all flabby. I felt, and I wasn't necessarily flabby, but I felt like everything's loose. I don't have muscle tone here. How am
Loose.
I going to
Right.
be organized? I'm loose as a goose. How am I going to, like, what if I wanted to sleep in the morning? I could sleep in. Wait a minute, that's not right. All of those judgments were coming at me. You know what I'm talking
Right.
about?
Yeah, I barely wear a bra anymore since I've been off for a year. I mean, I if I have public speaking, whatever, I will, but if I thought I could get away with it, I would.
That's true for me too. And
I
I am
hate
from the
wearing bras.
era where women burned bras.
Right, that was
Mhm.
the thing. It was before my time. I wanted my mom to burn hers, but it was the first kind of radical action against towards feminism.
That's right. 1963, Betty Friedan's Feminine Mystique came out. And that started raising consciousness on women's parts. And so women started saying, what am I doing wearing a bra? I stopped wearing a bra. At that point, I was 20 something, and I didn't need a bra. Also, the question came, why are we shaving? Why am I shaving the hair on my legs? What's wrong with having hair on my legs? Why am I shaving my armpits? A number
They
of
don't
women that
shave
I
hair up, we would tell ourselves.
Right. And also, a number of my ethnic friends didn't shave. They had this really like nice thatch and everything. So women even having a thatch between their breasts. I thought that was really cool. But I tell you, when I started going to meetings as an attorney and I put those pantyhose on, which I hated, it flattened down the hair on my legs. It was kind of like, oh, caca.
Tickly,
Anyway,
pulley even. It could be tickly or it could pull. Yeah, those
Ah,
pantyhose were horrible.
I
Or I,
hated that girl. Well, there was a book back in the day, really like 40 years ago or something, called Woman Hating. And it chronicled every single one of the abuses that women experienced over the years that either were inflicted on us, like foot tying in China, foot binding in China,
right.
or in it's still happening in Africa. I have a friend who's a doctor in Africa, and in some countries, women are having clitoral um, their clitorises are
Ectomy.
being curved. What's it called?
Ectomy. They take it out. They
Right.
damage it.
They stop it from working so that the woman can't feel pleasure.
Right.
And my friend who's a doctor over there said to me, I have women tell me, oh, I'm glad it happened because that's my role as a woman is to please my man. And if I'm thinking about myself, I'm not thinking about him. So all of these things imposed on women from tying with their feet so much, binding their feet in China. I read up on that, and those bones did not develop, and a lot of times the feet got infected, and then the women couldn't walk unless
Right.
their feet were bound.
Well, you couldn't run.
That's for sure. And guess what? During my era, when really high, like what's her name, the Princess of Wales wears those really high
Boots.
shoes with stiletto pointy toes. There were women who literally had their little toe removed so they could fit more comfortably into those stilettos. And
Right.
I wore those high shoes because I needed to be, as an attorney, I needed to be as tall as all those men I worked with, or at least
Right.
have some stature because I was 5'5.5". So I wore those high heels. I also felt pretty powerful, clomping down, not clomping, but clicking down the hallway in them. And what they did, learned this from a friend. I spent a summer at Harvard studying educational management, and there was a woman there who was an assistant dean at Barnard College, and I was an assistant dean at the University of Maine School of Law. And we both discovered that from wearing those high heels, the muscles on the back of our calves shortened. And those muscles would cramp up all the time. And once I learned that that was happening, I said, I can't do this anymore. I wear sneakers all the time, something called, what are they called? Hokas or something. Hokas. Even if I've got a long, wonderful dress from India on, I'm wearing hokas because I'm not messing with myself anymore.
Right.
So, girl, what we're talking about here is you raised it as a good point. It's about denial. Why are trauma survivors so much into denial? Why did my sister, God bless her, totally forget her childhood and yet call it a perfect childhood? What do you think? Why do we, what's purpose does
To
denial
belong.
serve?
To
Say it again.
belong. To belong in our family. That we can't. Everything in our culture encourages us to protect our family. To be one-minded about it. Not. Don't even consider others. You just. And if you get kicked out of there,
You're going to die.
you're in trouble. Yep, you're gonna die
There
because
were no
there's
halfway houses. There were no
nobody else.
homes.
Nobody else is gonna take care of you like your family.
That's the truth. I'm going to have some water to toast your hiccups here today.
Trust.
Yeah, water always helps. True. The
We can't
thing,
trust anyone else, just our family. So that is why we go into denial. That is why we succumb to demands that are ridiculous.
inhumane and inhuman they were. And I think you nailed it. One of the reasons is because our biological, neurological, most essential need is not to have food, it's to belong. That's according to Dr. Matthew Lieberman, who writes about our nervous systems. And he says, Maslow, smart man, but got it wrong. Maslow said, got to give kids food. Well, guess what? Kids are starving, but surviving all over the world. Why? Because somebody cares about them. But the
Right.
failure to thrive baby is the one that nobody cares about. And I know this because my own sister was a failure to thrive baby. She got the food, she got the formula, she got the clothes, she was in a warm house, but my mother was mentally ill and couldn't care for her. So the message about denial is you got to belong or you're going to die. The other thing about denial for me, Denise, is that to remember the abuse was so horrific,
Harsh.
harsh and deadening and destructive that my brain, my little baby's brain, couldn't handle it.
Even
I
as,
was,
as you're a healing adult, my sister I would say, you need a therapist, get a therapist and go and talk about healing with a therapist, some professional. And she'd be like, I don't want to talk over that. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to. So it was so humiliating or
it,
painful or
painful,
whatever.
and also I was afraid I was going to go crazy. And if I remembered all the things that happened,
Right.
and I think part of my mother's mental illness is that she also never owned this, but she was a incest survivor and an abuse survivor, and her father was an active alcoholic and abandoned 8 children.
Right.
But the deal there was she kept shutting down her brain so often that by the time she became, I don't even know if she could make it through school because she couldn't remember certain things. People were often told you got ADHD, you got ADD, because they were all involved in the moment. They couldn't think long term. But guess what? I think that's partially a survivor's tactic.
Mhm.
I can't think of anything that happened before I came to school because then I get too scared. And here's
Right.
something Dr. Bessel van der Kolk said in his powerful book, which is called The Body Keeps the Score. If you're into this, wanting to know about healing from trauma, that's a seminal, really crucial book. And he said that trauma survivors coming out of wars, we used to think it was just men that had been in war that had post-traumatic stress
Yes.
disorder. Not, yeah, but no, I've got complex post-traumatic stress disorder. About one out of
I
every
do
three
too.
women, we got it
Yeah.
with good reason. And so what he said was that those men coming out of the war that were traumatized all reported the same thing. This is about denial. Denise, they were afraid to say or to feel. They were afraid to feel what it was like to see somebody
Blown up.
shot, blown up,
It's
hit, or their own bodies being shot, blown up, hit, or just the terror. They were so afraid of remembering that what they thought was what they told their shrinks, if they were lucky enough to have one, was, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to remember any of it. It's better off in the past. And what they were afraid of was if they started feeling what happened to them, their emotions would take them over like a tsunami and they'd go crazy. They'd never
yep.
get back to sanity.
Especially if you have a mentally ill parent, because I know people that's the only thing they have is they didn't have abuse. They didn't, they might have had divorce and other things, but their mom was mentally ill. And it's still such a fear that they're going to be mentally ill because their mom was mentally ill. It's a
Right.
big
There's no
deal.
model. It's a very big deal. And there's no model there for how to soothe or comfort ourselves. I'm 79. I'm still learning how
Or
to
to
soothe
soothe
and
and
comfort
comfort
myself.
our mentally ill mother. I mean, you
Well, I learned
develop
how to help
skills,
her.
right? You develop
But
skills as a baby
I
to,
knew how to calm my mother down so she wouldn't go and slip down between the cracks of her depression or she wouldn't go into panic attack. I knew all kinds of things like art therapy and play therapy and dance therapy and music therapy. I didn't know what the hell I wouldn't have called it that, but somebody, when I was an adult, somebody said to me, these are the things you did with your mother to keep her from sliding into her mental illness. And that was true.
right?
That was true. And they helped me too. If I could get her to dance with me or sing with me, I knew that that would take her away. And what we know now about music is that music and laughter and being out of doors are three of the most rapid ways to get out of a funk. And funk is a nice way of saying get out of a panic attack because
Right.
we align with rhythms that are steady, steady, steady. Music will do that. The heartbeat of being out amongst the trees, the winds, all of that. So yeah, denial, we deny things, as Denise said, because because we don't want to think about it. And also because if we thought about it, we'd have to feel our feelings, and who the H wants to feel those kinds of feelings. And what's another reason for denial? Oh,
Because
because
they come so huge, your feelings become, you're afraid that they will be so huge that you're off. You
that's the
lost it.
tsunami thing. It'll knock us out of sanity. And what you said was, if I feel those feelings, I cannot belong to my family. And
Right.
I'm a living example here. I think very sadly, about 2 years ago, I went to see the oldest living relative in my family. I was speaking nearby and I made a special visit to the family, what was the family ghetto, the Sicilian ghetto of Rochester, New York. And I went to see her. And she refused to see me. And she refused to see me. She had her reasons, but she refused to see me because I was the person who violated the family code of silence by saying that I was an incest survivor. And so the men in the family, and a lot of the women too, all circled up around that. We don't talk about it. We don't talk. We don't trust. We don't feel. And I remember saying to one of my cousins, who doesn't talk to me either, when it turned out that his brother, one of my other cousins, was molesting his daughter, I said, guys, this happened to me, and I know the only way for me to heal about it is if we talk about it. And two things happened immediately. One of the minions, one of the nephews, came up and filled up my wine glass so high if I didn't drink it, it was going to spill, and filled up everybody else's wine glass. In other words, drink up and stop thinking.
Stop
And
talking.
don't you dare talk. And my very Sicilian, very authoritarian cousin said to me, he was Sicilian on both sides, and he said to me, we don't talk about that, right? Gave the command to every man, because everybody was a male in this group, except for me. And I think I was the privileged woman to be there. All the other women were cooking in the kitchen. I stayed with them because I didn't have got job cooking, and because I wanted to have a conversation. But there I was sitting with all these men, and he said, we don't talk about it. I said to him, I said his name, and I said, I talk about it because it's the only way I know to heal. I don't need to blame anybody. I don't need to shame anybody. I don't need to inflame the world because of what happened. But what I need to do is to face the fact that tell the truth. These things happen to me, and they affect everything about me. Every relationship I've ever had with a lover, totally affected by the
Yep.
sexual abuse. No, but anyway, they did not want to talk about it. And I never saw I never saw those guys again. That was it. So I don't know if I'll ever see my aunt again because she didn't want to see me, and she's in her 90s. The brothers and the uncle of the cousins and their nephews, they don't, your thing about belonging. I made the choice to be true to myself, and I chose my family. There's another thing about trauma survivors. We have chosen families. Denise, does that fit you too?
Oh, yeah, totally. I moved away from my family at age 22
Mhm.
with a romantic partner, and I was gone for 35 years. And I did create a family uh, out of that. Still connected family, even though I now am associating with my biological family. Also still associate with my chosen family. Thank goodness for Facebook. That really makes it convenient to stay connected with those people.
Yeah, it was brave of you to come back. Brave of you to come back. And that was propelled in large part by your decision that you wanted to reestablish healthy
Right.
connections with your family. And that's not easy to have healthy boundaries with people who were raised, generally speaking, without boundaries. There's another trait of trauma
Right.
survivors. We didn't have boundaries. We weren't allowed boundaries. And if we had boundaries, like to say, I want you to stay out of my room, those boundaries were invaded.
Right.
Denise and I both had men coming into our room. I couldn't even lock my door. It was just, I couldn't put up the boundary. And I've read story after story about people like Eleanor Roosevelt, because she had lived in a big estate, of course, growing up. And she had a cousin or an uncle staying with her, and he was a pedophile. And so she would shove every night big bureau against the door because he would come and push on the door to get in. Now I couldn't do that because there was no way to lock the door, no way to have a boundary. So when you chose to come back from Phoenix to re-enter your family system, how on earth did you feel like you had learned something about boundaries, or what gave you the courage to do that?
Yeah, I knew that, I'm safe now. I became safe. I focused on healing. I knew the truth. I was willing to speak the truth even to my sisters. I really wanted to be with my sisters because
Hmm,
I realized in my healing that I really subjected myself to that abuse to protect my sisters.
that's right, you did. You
And
were the
so I
oldest, right?
thought that I was protecting them. But come to find out, in my own self discovery, my sisters were molested too. It's
You
not
did your
confirmed
best,
by
but
the
you
one
couldn't.
who's in denial, but they were molested too in a pedophile's home. Even my brother, maybe he was never touched, but he was in an abuse house. The secrets were there. The lusting for youth was there. He couldn't, he had to, he was a part of it too. He was affected by pedophilia.
And there's
So I
another thing.
had to come back and be with my sisters. That is what my main interest was. And, I wanted to make a relationship with my mom too.
Hmm. And why? Given these that people had hurt you or rejected you or abused you. I mean, the men who were your primary abusers, not there anymore.
No, he
But the
was
women,
still there when I came back.
really,
He was.
wait, the person
There's a
that
few times I wanted to push him down the basement steps, but I didn't.
the guy that was with you when you were a 13-year-old, the kid?
Yeah, the guy that
That's
molested
the
me,
same guy. Oh
evil
man.
stepfather, right? That's what I call him, evil stepfather. He was still alive and well. And thank goodness my brother, who is his biological child, uh, didn't, have ambitions about getting out of the house. So my brother stayed home, lived with them the whole time. And so my brother cared for my evil stepfather. Now he cares for my mom. So it's pretty good.
So your evil stepfather, how long has he been gone?
Now he's been gone probably 4 years, 5 years, but I've been
Wow.
back
So
since 2011. So,
wow.
he was there.
Wow. That was very brave to come back.
Yeah. I mean, he
Very
was
brave.
feeble, he was weak. I didn't, he had even once said to me, "You're just waiting for me to die." And I was like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
You might be right about that. But still,
I
my
yeah.
mom still is loyal to her, belief that I had a beautiful childhood and that I should be appreciative.
And you have told her, you had a conversation. You had a come to Jesus Buddha Hillel meeting with her, right? And you said,
Yeah,
he's doing this,
yeah. And
but she
she,
still,
but she still is loyal to him. Like I did when I was 17 years old or so. The last time that he molested me, I went to my mom and told her, and she said it'll never happen again. And it never did. However, there was also it was just then supposed to go under the rug and never mention it again. And I was
that
supposed to
didn't
be
mean it
okay.
wouldn't happen with your sisters. Do you think it still kept going with your sister?
No, I think once that I came out about it, that he quit.
Okay, well, I hope that's true.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. Well, here's what you just did again, Thor's. Thank you. Is identified another characteristic, or as one of the books says, there are 14 traits of, at least 14 traits of trauma survivors. And that I wrote about those in my book. One of them is we become people pleasers. Another one is we become afraid of authority figures and become people pleasers as a result. Now, I want to bring this right into the present because I just recently witnessed something that really I'm so grateful. My instant response was anger. I'm going to tell you what happened. It's all over the news, so I can talk about it. So I went to law school in 1973. My class was the first class that had any significant number of women, and we were still the minority. It was harder to get into law school forever, including my class, if you're a woman. In fact, the men were so obnoxious, many of them, that one of the professors said, "All right, guys, I understand you're being really abusive to the women. That we don't want that to happen here. They have a right to be here. They have a right to be here because their grade point averages are higher than yours on average, and their law school admission test averages are higher than yours." And my first response was, yeah, he's telling them, but then I said, oh, mother of God, this is a professor of the law who's supposed to be about equity and fairness saying it's okay to discriminate against women. And if they were discriminating against women, they were discriminating against people of color. I had 2 or 3 people of color in my class, and they had such a hard time, I'll tell you. So here's what happened. One of my classmates, one of the first women, to be at any number of women at this university school of law, we were buddies. In fact, I remember the first year we did a dramatic reading of the Supreme Court case that said women can't be attorneys. Women can't be attorneys, the Supreme Court of the United States said, because our brains are too small. We're only able to deal with details. We can't deal with the big picture. So we did a dramatic reading of that. That was fun. The second semester, when the professors were saying all these awful things. I mean, didn't know what they were, either they didn't know what they were doing or they knew what they were doing and did it anyway. But the classic thing in law school was to make dumb blonde jokes. And each one of them had I swear to God, a big black book full of dumb blonde jokes. So I got really pissed and I gathered the women together and I said, guys, I'm going to invite us to do something different in this second semester because I've had it. And they said, what's going on? I said, every time the professors or a man in the class put women down, especially with the dumb blonde jokes and the other stuff about women can't do things, I'm going to suggest we hiss them. Because if we all do it together, they're not going to know. It's just Bruno over there hissing. And it's going to stop them. Well, anyway, guess what happened? We sat in the back. We decided we'd all sit in the back. And the minute somebody said something, if any of us picked it up, we'd start. And the whole back of the room would go. And those men didn't like being hissed. Now, what did they call us? I found out afterwards, the snake pit. But that form of resistance worked. Why?
Right.
Because we did it together, because we were clear with them. We were honest and deliberate. When you make fun of one woman, you're making fun of all women. When you put down one woman, you're putting us down. This is not funny to us. Well, they thought it was funny as hell. Anyway, here's what happened. So this woman and I can say her name, Janet Mills, was one of my classmates. Now, she was, unlike me, she was from a old Maine family of lawyers. Everybody was a lawyer. Everybody was, she was being primed to become governor. When we graduated from law school, she and I were the only 2 women from our class that got named assistant attorneys general in the criminal division. Now, I went on to become a professor and go into academia. Janet stayed on and she moved on up. She did the right thing. And if you want to be governor, she became the attorney general of the state of Maine. And then she ran for governor of Maine. Now she's a Democratic governor and I applaud her. for, the stance she takes. And she was certainly a feminist in law school. I don't know how free she can be about that now, but I think she's probably as strong as she can be. And I applaud that. There are a bunch of these Democratic governors that are saying, wait a minute, the rights that you're taking away, the DEI rights that are being taken away, that's so wrong. Anyway, there was, and you might have seen it, some kind of gathering of governors, I guess at the White House. And all of this, I don't watch news except for one network, which is MSNBC, because I know there I will get the facts, get the truth. Maybe that's where I was watching it, but this president, the felon, the convicted felon of 34 felonies, the predator, the man who abuses women, now the president, was picking out of the whole effing crowd. He said, is the governor of Maine here? Now, do you think he knew if she was there or not? Absolutely. Yeah. Did you see this on TV?
I have not.
It's coming up again because there are protests in Maine. They're like standing up for her, which I'm really grateful about. He said, "A governor of Maine, I hear that you are in favor of transgender people being able to play on the girls' teams. Is that right?" She went right into her attorney mode and she said, "I enforce the law." Well, he said, he just kept picking at her, like, "Oh, so you enforce the law? Well, that's going to change. You have an election coming up. Yeah, I'll be surprised if you're elected again. And not only that, that'll be an easy job to make sure you're not elected." And he said, "Yeah, we'll forget what you're trying to do about this DEI stuff." Actually, I think he said, "Forget what you're trying to do about transgender people. Come on." He said, "We're going to get rid of that. We've already gotten rid of all this stuff." And he said, so anyway, he kept like egging her on. And she finally said, it was a voice you couldn't hear very well, not because she's not speaking up, but he had the microphone, the bully pulpit. She didn't. But she said 5 words. "I'll see you," no, 4 words. "I'll see you in court." So now there are signs all over the place. "I'll see you in court." She did it. All these other governors, Pritzker where's he from? The guy in the Midwest someplace. He's Jewish. He gave the most persuasive speech as a Democratic governor about what's happening right here is what's happened in Nazi Germany. Let me give you the facts on that. Good for him. All these other governors, Newsom, standing up and saying, don't punish the people of California by not aiding them when the fire's going on here. We got fire. We need help. That's what FEMA's for. Anyway, all this punitive, cruel stuff and threats, what bullies do, that's what's going on. And so I want to say, I'm really angry. I am really angry because I know this woman. I mean, I would be angry anyway if I didn't know her, but I know she has worked hard because she was doing it when I knew her almost 50 years ago in law school. She was a feminist. She and I were out there taking stands for women having the right to have choices like becoming an attorney, if that's what we had the wherewithal to do, whether we could afford it or not. We were going to make it. And we did. I don't
remember what time we started, but I'm going to say we have like 2 minutes.
Oh, I think you're right. I think it's about, you're right. Thank you so
13.
much.
Yeah, I think it was around.
Yeah. 13. So let me just wrap this and say, I wanted to talk about that, Denise, and everybody who's listening, because it's the situation that many countries are in, but particularly the United States right now, has a governance, people in charge who are very much like many of us faced when we were children.
Right.
Predators, molesters, narcissists, misogynists, people who say, grab them by the you-know-what. And they're in charge and they're appointing other people with the same attitude. For years, I worked on emotional intelligence, the ability to read people as well as to read books. I see nada a relationship building or emotional intelligence, which is what Head Start's about, which is what
Right.
early childhood's about. So it's very foreign. And what I want to say is, as a trauma survivor, ask Denise to talk about this too, I was not ever allowed anger. My father was the one who could fly into a violent, murderous rage. My mother, when she lost her mind, was just frightening to death. We could not have anger. It has taken me decades to become at home with the anger that flares up in me like a fire thrower, and to temper that so that I can channel it into doing good with
Action.
it.
Right.
Action. Now, Denise, I know you and I have talked for years about how challenging it is for you to even feel anger, and
Yeah.
I've been there. So how
Yes.
about you? How are you doing with this, especially when things happen that have got to outrage you?
It's my least familiar emotion is anger. And part of that is Catholicism, I think, as well, my Catholic upbringing, and abuse, right? Turn the other cheek, right? And I really bought into the kindness of Holy Mary. So those things, I still don't like, I don't feel anger raising up in me, even though I know that Donald Trump is doing the worst things ever. It, I'm I still don't really register with anger.
I might share with you the next time, and we have to end in about a minute, but the next time I'm going to share with you a letter that I received from a fellow Head Start employee who worked her way up, 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 up until she got hired in Washington, D.C. And she'd been there for, I think she moved this summer to take on her new job. She sent me the same letter that I'm now hearing about from all kinds of other sources. You're fired. You're fired. We don't want you. You're not qualified. You ain't got the rhythm. You ain't got the brains. You ain't got that.
Right.
I was,
Everything, even the forest rangers. I mean, come on. They don't do anything political. They take care of the owls and the squirrels.
and the wolves and the parking lots and the, oh my God. And
Right. Take
that's,
out the trash.
that's who was on TV. This woman who was working with the foresters, and she worked hard. She was first in her class. She like put herself, like she was like really admirable, and she studied up. And this was her dream job in, I don't know, Iowa or someplace. She got the same letter that my friend in Head Start got, and it could have just said LIFO, FIFO, last in, first out. It could have just said,
Right.
look, we're cutting back, and you, because that's legal. We're
Right.
cutting back. And so we're saying to you that we're just letting you go. And I mean, you could say more things like, well, you're not needed anymore. But this letter went on to say,
Right.
you're this, you're
Your
not that.
performance is ungood. Yeah, they, even though they had an evaluation last week from their
Right.
supervisor that said they're doing a beautiful job, thank you for your hard work. Now they got a letter that says you're out, your performance is not measured up.
So, friends listening, we need to end.
Yeah.
We've covered so many of the traits and the characteristics that we trauma survivors have. And Denise and I are presenting to you two different ways of dealing with don't talk, don't trust, don't feel, especially anger. I'm saying I'm hopping mad, and I deal with that. And sometimes I'm not always on point with my anger, but I'm working on it. And Denise is saying, you know what? I got a different path here.
Right.
Whatever path you take as a trauma survivor, you're welcome here, because we help each other walk each other home.
Right.
We invite you to do that with us every Monday afternoon, 3 o'clock East Coast.
And if I come up with anger, if I experience anger, I have support and encouragement from the relationships that we have developed. And
That's right. That's right. I meet at
so,
5 times a week with trauma survivors, and we meet for an hour and a half, and we talk about how are we being true to ourselves, given we were taught not to have a true self. And then Denise and I are here with you tell other people about this program. It's a safe place. It's a welcoming place where we tell the truth, and we tell the truth so we can heal. It's helpful, honey. Denise, thank you so much. I'll see you next week.